We are live on X, on YouTube, on Facebook. This is the Red Pen Podcast. Thanks everybody for showing up. We'll give some time for more people to tune in. Chip and I were just talking about the disappointing loss from the San Antonio Spurs. If you might or might not know, those in the audience, I'm actually a resident of San Antonio, Texas, and I cried myself to sleep last night. It was not great because Chip was just mentioning that's the first time he thinks that a team has been in the finals in the NBA history where they lost with that big of a lead, 29 points going into halftime.
It is the biggest lead blown in the finals ever. And I'm not necessarily a Spurs fan, but as a Celtics fan, I can never pull for the Knicks. So by default, I was pulling for the Spurs.
Yeah. So, and here we go. We're down 3-1. But okay,
you can come back. I mean, if I'm the Knicks, I'm not super confident right now because so many of these games have been close. It could just as easily be 3-1 Spurs right now.
Yeah, it's just, man, I was telling my family during halftime, like, there's just no way that you can lose with this much of a lead. And they did it. They somehow did. They proved me wrong.
They did prove me wrong.
But okay, it's the Red Pen Podcast, everybody. It's powered by Americans for Fair Treatment. I'm Corey DeAngelis, a senior fellow at Americans for Fair Treatment. And we have the co-host, as usual, Chip Rogers. He's the CEO of Americans for Fair Treatment. How's it going, Chip?
Another beautiful day, beautiful summer day. I love summer. Being a Southerner, I enjoy warm weather. So good.
You said you're in New Jersey of all places. I'm in Texas, and it's hotter there than it is in Texas right now.
It is. In fact, I'll look at my phone right now. It is 93 right now in Princeton, New Jersey.
Beautiful. Okay, so let's jump into it. We have this is the tweet that I put out based on this story. Someone just sent me some of the financials for this ballot initiative fight in Washington State. So this is, deep blue area. They got tons of signatures to put a couple things on the ballot. One is protecting girls' sports, so keeping boys out of girls' sports. And then the other one is pretty simple as well. It's to have more transparency in the public school system. Don't keep secrets from parents. Pretty simple stuff. It enhances parental rights. And at the time when we saw that this was gathering signatures, they ended up getting over 100,000 more signatures than they needed. So it wasn't even close. So people, these are a couple 80-20 issues that should pass even in a deep blue state, but polls are not elections. And as we can see already, the teachers union is the biggest supporter of the group coming out against these initiatives. The group is called No Hate in Washington State. And you just look at their financials here. The total, amount between the unions and the ACLU is over $500,000. And just between the NEA and the Washington affiliate of the NEA, that's $423,000. And it's only June. This is on the ballot in November. So it's going to be a true test of sanity, whether a blue state can have some sense of sanity. This isn't like they're voting on school choice on the ballot, which is a little more touchy-feely because, maybe the union's fighting to protect their funding stream and whatnot. But this isn't even, these initiatives aren't even, shouldn't even be all that consequential. For the unions at least. And I don't see why they're fighting so hard against something that really doesn't affect their bottom line. Just real quick though, if you don't, just so listeners can see that this No Hate in Washington State, they're fighting against this one, which is parental rights, and this ballot initiative, which is protecting girls' sports. They're locking arms with this pro-abortion group, also Planned Parenthood, another pro-abortion group. And here you go, the Washington Education Association, the state affiliate of the NEA. I just got to bring this up because look at how they are branding and diluting the airwaves and muddying the water with these initiatives. Instead of calling them parental rights and transparency in public schools, they're calling that first one it's common sense protections for child abuse victims. They're basically trying to say that if you don't keep secrets from parents, their parents are going to abuse them, which is just total, it's just ludicrous. And then the second one at protecting girls sports, their main argument there is that it puts girls at greater risk of harm by requiring invasive genital exams to play sports. One, it doesn't, but two, in order to play sports basically everywhere, including in Washington State, you already have to have a physical. So it's just, what do you think about this kind of craziness in Washington State, Chip?
A lot to touch on here, but I'll try to do it quickly. First of all, my golden rule in everything as it pertains to these type of organizations and movements, when the other side uses, when they have to rhyme, like no hate in Washington State, whatever a group is, if they're out chanting stuff and they're rhyming and things like that, whatever they're for, I'm against. That's just like my golden rule. It usually means they have no message whatsoever. And so all they have to do is come out with a rhyme or a fluorescent t-shirt with a rhyme on it. And so that's my kind of golden rule. They rhyme, I'm against it. Now, when you look at this, it's interesting. It's almost universal that these crazy people can never debate the actual issues, right? And so they make up things like as you pointed out, you're already required to have a physical, but invasive physical exams. Number one, you're already required, but they reference girls getting hurt. You know, it's interesting because if Corey, I know you're aware of this, but folks, look up what happened in North Carolina when the legislature there had to pass this legislation. And the spokesperson or the young lady they used as the example who actually spoke to the legislature was a young girl who was forced to play volleyball with a male who was bigger, taller, and stronger. And by the way, the males play at a higher net level. And so now that at the lower net level with the girls, he can spike the ball much more easily. And he did, and with such force that it hit this girl in the face and partially paralyzed her. So when you're talking about girls getting injured, this is exactly why, since the dawn of mankind, that women did certain sports and males did certain sports in those type of competitions, because we're not the same. That's not that's not news, right? And you are putting girls in physical danger, like this poor girl in North Carolina. And so that is the story that should be being told, not this nonsense that's just made up drivel about invasive exams that you already have to take if you're going to play a sport.
Yeah, they can't just argue about the policy. Do we want boys and girls sports? They have to argue about these almost implementation, but it's not even based on the truth. I mean, you can verify sex other ways. Right. And by the way, they're already doing this.
Birth certificates would be an easy one. But here's the thing, Corey, even if they were right on all of this, and they're not, but even if they were right on all of this, it's still an improper use of these teachers' funds. Like, that's the recurring thing that we talk about again and again and again. They use the money that they take from the teachers for things that have nothing to do with the teachers. Frankly, in this case, really nothing to even do with education in the classroom. And it's just wasting these poor teachers' hard-earned dollars.
That's right. And it's almost $500,000. And and it's only June. They're going to ramp up their efforts through November, through Election Day. And so who knows how much money it's going to be, but this is a national union. This is the state level union. So even if you're in a different state, your dues are funneling up to the NEA, who's then spending your money to fight against protecting girls sports and to fight to keep parents in the dark. So if you're a teacher who doesn't want to fund this crap, you can opt out. And one way to do so is you go to myduesmychoice.org. And we just reported that 2,800 employees in the public sector have contacted Americans for Fair Treatment for help with opting out of their public sector unions. And that's just been in 9 months. And if you do the quick math on that, Chip, I think it's over $250,000 of dues that are being reduced from the public sector because of those 2,800 employees that they leave.
Those employees get to keep the money that they earned, and that money's not being blown on stupid nonsense like what's happening in Washington State.
Yep. And so there's a couple other things that we wrote about at Americans for Fair Treatment. And over the past week, there's been lots of stories of embezzlement schemes with union bosses. This one alone that we had written about at AFFT talks about a $20 million embezzlement scheme that lasted over 15 years. And this was a conviction of people that lived in North Carolina, Missouri, Ohio. And basically what they were doing is using union funding, the dues from their members, on expenses that benefited themselves and not the union overall. So luxury foreign travel, we got personal shopping and dining expenses, salaries that they didn't earn. And it's just crazy that how much money is going towards all of these different stories all across the country, where the leadership is just not really taking care of that money.
Well, look, when you establish the fact that you're going to use money on things that have nothing to do with teaching or nothing to do with teachers, like the story we just mentioned a moment ago, like the stories we bring up almost every time we have this show, it's not a giant leap to then be able to just simply excuse this type of embezzlement. I mean, the old adage of a slippery slope. This is it. I mean, they're taking their money to use for things that don't help teachers. Well, why not just use that money on foreign trips and jewelry and those type things? It's not, like I said, it's not that big a leap, but it's an environment that has been created that these unions take the money from the teachers and then they behave as if it's their own money to use for whatever purpose they want, from vacations to political races. And so we got to get back to sanity here. And the sanity is, first, teachers, just keep your own money, opt out and you keep your own money. But if in fact you do want to stay in your union for whatever reason, at least demand some sort of accountability. And we've been talking about that with the legislation we referenced a couple weeks ago that passed in Iowa, where now finally there's some teeth to the law that shows that they have to be able to prove, how they're spending money, to all sorts of states that are now making sure that these teachers are reaffirming their desire to be in the unions to begin with. All these accountability measures are necessary specifically because of the story that you just raised: embezzlement, wasting on political races that have nothing to do with teaching. That's why you have to have accountability.
Yep. And then you had also written just last week about other stories where union officials were stealing from their own members. And it's not just teachers union. There's other public sector unions that have problems too. This article you wrote alone references stories from Ohio union boss stealing $65,000, an Arkansas firefighter union president stealing $50,000, a Colorado union vice president for law enforcement stealing $17,000, diverting it to his personal account. And if you add just these three stories up, that's over 130,000. In one of the early episodes of Red Pen, Chip, we had also talked about how there was a teachers union bosses in Florida that's embezzled, over $2 million. And they got a federal indictment and they were sentenced to years in prison because of this. It's just crazy how much of this embezzlement happens. But you're right. This is a good reason to go to myduesmychoice.org, opt out of your union, get personal liability insurance another way, and also to pass bills like we saw in Iowa to hold the public sector union bosses accountable. And in a little bit, we're going to bring in New Hampshire Representative Brian Labrie. He's one of the sponsors of one of the main bills that we were watching this year in New Hampshire. Other ones passed in Florida, Iowa, and elsewhere, but we'll talk about that when he comes on. Another story. So, Chip, what's your grade for these first couple of stories? Whether it's the teachers unions fighting against girls' sports or all this embezzlement.
Everybody's getting F's across the board today.
There we go. Okay, it's pretty easy.
Bad. It occurs to me that maybe the crusade we need to go on is to have we'll just start with teachers, since that seems to be the area where most of the abuse is happening. But maybe every teacher in America, just for 1 year, pause your dues, see if your union can shape up and prove that they are fiscally responsible with your money. And then if you want to go back in and fund them, that's your decision. But it sure would be nice to see them be forced into some sort of accountability.
Yeah, I think that's the only way to hold them accountable at this point. One, yes, we could from the top down do these bills like we saw in Florida, having annual elections to be able to recertify your union every year, stuff like that, and have more transparency with the members, stuff like that. But ultimately, bottom up accountability is the strongest. If you have teacher choice or public employee choice, where you're opting out, voting with your feet, kind of like school choice competition in a way, where that incentivizes the school system to do a better job. This would incentivize union bosses to do a better job, maybe focus on the members and education as opposed to activism like we're seeing. And here's another story from Consumers Research executive director. His name's Will Hild. And someone sent this to me today. And he basically, their group sent a letter to the Department of Labor demanding an investigation into Randy Weingarten's union, the American Federation of Teachers. Chip and I covered this a few weeks ago, which was a video of Randy Weingarten bragging to her members about how she pressured Target to attack ICE or to boycott ICE, stop shopping there. And she also bragged to her members that she got on a meeting with Target executives telling them, hey, you know what, Target? Our union pensions own about 8% of Target's stock is in the union pensions. So if you don't come out against immigration enforcement, guess what we're going to do? We're going to pull that funding. That is a breach of their fiduciary duty. And it really hurts the union members more than anybody else. And so Will mentions this. He mentions some other examples as well, like when she demanded asset managers to divest from Tesla because she didn't like Elon Musk. And since she made that claim about her workers' retirements needing protected, and that's why they wanted people to divest from Tesla, it had everything to do with political concerns. The Tesla stock has increased by 40% since then. Fossil fuel divestment initiatives, pressure campaigns targeting firearm manufacturers. They voted to boycott Target over DEI policies. Threats of divestment from GM and Stellantis over union demands. So all this crap has nothing to do with her workers' retirement. And so it'd be great if the Department of Labor looked into this.
And they should, because imagine a scenario where this really takes hold and everyone starts doing this. I mean, first of all, let's be clear. People with no money skills or this is not what they do for a living should not be anywhere near these pension funds. And so for Randy Weingarten to think about what she's saying, and then Tesla was a perfect example. The folks who run those pension funds have one duty and one duty only: to maximize the returns for the teachers who put their retirement in there. Right. If you allow any other concern to come into play, then you are, by definition, not maximizing the returns, and you're taking away the money from the teachers. And so here we go again, the same recurring theme. She's not just satisfied with taking their money and using it on political campaigns. She's not satisfied with just taking their money and promoting her own book. Now she wants to take their pension money and use it for political purposes that would reduce the amount of return that they have on their investments. People like Randy Weingarten need to stay 10 miles away from this. And the Department of Labor could send a message by getting involved here and doing the right thing. And to your point, Corey, had these people made the foolish decision to listen to her about Tesla stock, think of all the money that they would have lost, because Tesla, as you pointed out, is up 40%.
Yeah, exactly right. So I know you got to be out in 1 minute. So we have two more stories, Chip. I guess for that one, an A for sending that letter, and an A if the Department of Labor looks into it, but an F for Randy Weingarten leveraging pension funds and otherwise for political purposes. And let's see, there was a meeting this week in DC about the new Trump school choice tax credit scholarship program nationwide. And basically what it focused on is, one, it said the rules will probably be finalized in September. This is a dollar for dollar tax credit. And basically, I think this meeting was trying to tell Democrats, hey, don't be scared of this. This could benefit public schools as well. So not a huge update there. And then the last one is that there was a pride display at a Washington State school, a high school, and it contained vials of testosterone injections. And the sheriff's office is now looking into it. Crazy.
At a time
It's
where American
crazy.
education is failing left and right, why are they doing these things? They've got some serious issues.
Yep. All right, Chip. Thanks so much
Thanks, Corey.
for hopping on. Chip's on the road this week. We're gonna have New Hampshire Representative Brian Labrie come on to talk about his bill in New Hampshire. So for everybody who's just now jumping on, this is the Red Pen Podcast, and we now have Representative Brian Labrie. Thanks for coming on. How's it going?
Corey, I don't know if you can. I'm having a little trouble with the audio on this.
I can hear you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Can you hear us?
All right. So I cannot hear you. And I need to figure out how I'm going to hear you.
1, 2, 3.
Everyone can see and hear you. Gotcha.
Let's see. I can hear you.
Interesting. So for some reason, Corey, I can't hear you, buddy.
Okay. So we will remove Brian from the screen real quick. And I just want to, touch on that story from the tax credit scholarship program real quick, because we kind of had to run through it. But there was basically, they had people like Jorge Elorza come talk about how this could actually benefit blue states as well. So the basic concept is simple. You can donate up to $1,700 every single year and get a dollar for dollar tax credit back the next year in April or whatever, when you do your taxes. And then people can go to a scholarship granting organization like ACE Scholarships, for example, is one of them that's been doing this for over a quarter century. And those families can go, if they're income eligible, I think about 90% of families are eligible. They can get the scholarships to go to a private school. And this can be stacked with scholarship programs that you already have in your state. So if you're in Florida, Arizona, you have universal school choice already, you got a $10,000 scholarship or whatever it is in your state, you could add on to that scholarship amount with this federal tax credit scholarship. I'm going to see if Brian can come back in. Let's see if, hey, Brian, can you hear me now?
I can. Can you hear me?
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, great.
All right. We're in business.
What's crazy is, just so the listeners know, Brian and I tested this out before. So sometimes just restarting things actually does a lot to help. And
yeah, we're good.
It's the best. If you have any technical issue, just restart it. It usually works. So Brian, could you give me a little bit of a background of your time in the legislature, your time in New Hampshire? And then we really want to get into this bill that had some momentum earlier this year. And it was House Bill 1704 in New Hampshire. That was your bill. You were the primary sponsor. And it had to do a little bit with holding public sector unions accountable. So, take it away.
It did. So this is my first term in the New Hampshire legislature as a state rep, which is 2 years here. Coming up on the tail end of it now. And I just signed up today, as a matter of fact, to run for 2 more years. So that's good news, because we have a lot of unfinished work to do here. House Bill 1704. I'm a New Hampshire native, by the way. So I've been in New Hampshire my whole life, southern part of New Hampshire. I own 3 small businesses now in the trade sector. So you can see him in work garb here today, jumping out of the truck and on the podcast. 1704 came to me through Americans for Fair Treatment in a great relationship I've developed with Matt Gress. And we worked very hard on this, and there were a lot of moving parts with it. It was the first time this particular piece of legislation was put forward in New Hampshire. Folks would call it in a weird kind of way. They would give it the name Right to Work Light, if you will. And that was what got adopted here. I can tell you from the outset, when we had our hearings in committee, that it didn't seem to ruffle a lot of feathers. We didn't have the right to work jammed up hallways and pickets and protesters. We had a very dialed back version of that. And what I can tell you is there were a lot of private emails, and I got a bunch of phone calls of people that would reach out to me and say, Representative Labrie, thank you very much for putting this legislation forward. My husband or my wife is a teacher, and this means the world to us to have an opportunity to speak for ourselves and negotiate for ourselves. So, I look back at it, and as I went through the stages and tried to reach out to the agencies, you get I'll tell you this, Corey, you get a much clearer picture of the product once it's over.
Mhm.
And you can replay this in your head as to what happened and why it happened and everything else. And I went to different agencies, and the agencies, while for face value they were receptive, you could tell that at the end of the conversation they really didn't want to see this go, because the agency heads, they didn't want to have to work any harder. And while they may have believed in the product and in the bill, they just knew that it would bring all kinds of chaos for them. And maybe they were retiring, or maybe they had a year to go and they just didn't want to deal with it. So that was an interesting piece of it. Yeah. So would I do it again? I would do it. Absolutely do it again. And now I've learned what we should do and what we shouldn't do, and how to make it a better bill, a better product. And I can say I genuinely believe that the public employees here in New Hampshire are behind this. It's just there is a union influence of retribution
Mhm.
that these people are afraid of to some degree, and that's not everybody. And we just have to figure out a way to navigate that, and allow these folks to get ahead in life. It's not a problem working for the state. I think it's a good job.
Yeah, so the unions can still negotiate contracts, right? With the school district, for example, and then your bill would allow individual teachers to negotiate their own contracts too. Is that how it works?
You could do one or the other. This was an A or B.
Yeah, so you're giving more options to employees.
100%. It was a choice. Yep.
And so what was the main pushback? Because it passed out of committee 11-9. That was party line, right? Pretty much.
It passed out of committee party line. We knew that that's how it was going to go before it was even introduced.
Yep.
Just we know our particular committee that good.
And then on the floor, how close
Yeah,
was
so
it?
let me tell you what I learned with this, Corey, as a first-year legislator. So I'm a stats guy. I roll on stats, and I do my homework, and I like numbers, and I like bell curves, and I like different things, right? Here's what I learned. I learned that there are certain times, depending on your numbers, whether you have Republican or Democrat, in our particular case, I think we have 225 Republicans and maybe 117 Democrats, right? I'm sorry,
Yeah.
177 Democrats. So we have like the second largest legislative body in the free, right? Behind, I think behind U.S. Congress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, biggest state level, and it's one of the smallest states too.
Yeah, and then I think Pennsylvania's behind us. So what I learned with that was you have to time this. You have to time the vote, right? And we put rules in place at the beginning of the term. We put a special order rule, which means along the way we could special order a bill to whatever part of the day we wanted to. We knew that there would be issues like this. We missed the boat on the special order for this, and it's a case of, this particular bill went to the floor on a very late night, when we had 1 million bills to go through. And I want to say the Democrats were watching this like a hawk. They were watching our numbers leave. And as our numbers left the chamber, they were literally calling on the phone their numbers to come in. And they were just selling to them like, hey, listen, I only need you for a half an hour. Just come to the chamber. So they would come back. So their numbers are going up. Our numbers are going down. And they took advantage of that rule and special ordered this. And we couldn't stop it at that point. We didn't have the numbers to do it. But what I'll tell you is this. We were 2 or 3 votes shy with being in the wrong place at the wrong time. We still had awesome numbers to support this when we didn't have a full house. So that to me spoke.
So if we had everybody there, it would have passed.
So here's what I've learned, right, to give away all the trade secrets. At least in the New Hampshire legislature with the numbers we have now, 11:15 in the morning is the time you pull the lever for a vote. That's just what it is.
And everybody's there.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people, and this is no secret, a lot of people leave after, and maybe a lot of people come a little bit late. So you have a very tight window to get critical votes off. And moving forward, we need to hit our windows.
Yeah.
And we need to take advantage of special order.
Well, New Hampshire Republicans have had some great momentum recently. I mean, the universal school choice has passed. I think there was a bill banning the World Economic Forum curriculum in the public school system.
Yep.
Homeschool freedom advanced this year. And on your bill, HB 1704, I remember I got into a little bit of a Twitter scuffle with one of the Republicans who was against it. And I did some digging, and I saw that he was endorsed by the umbrella union over Randy Weingarten's union, AFL-CIO, and he called it the worst bill of the year. He said it ignores 800 voices in opposition, and it creates. So I want you to respond to this. Basically, is why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah.
It undermines local control, creates chaos. Apparently this guy votes with the Democrats 25% of the time. But as far as like, I was like, where the heck did this come from a Republican going all out against this bill? I'd never seen anything like it. What do you think was going on there?
Here's the scoop. Mike Boards is a decent guy. Mike Boards is the mayor of Laconia, New Hampshire, which, if you're familiar with Bike Week and Motorcycle Weekend and type of stuff, Laconia is one of the big three. So he's this is at the Lakes region here in New Hampshire, central New Hampshire. And Mike is, I believe he comes from a fire or police family. So he's got that union tie. He's got that union tentacle out there. And of course, he's a city guy. He deals with unions all day long. So it's no surprise that Mike is a union guy. And what we do have, unfortunately, in the House is we have a faction of Republicans that are good votes for the most part, but when it comes to anything that touches union, they secede from our group.
Yep.
And we have to battle this. And until we can figure out a way to get our numbers up from 222 to 240, that's what we call it, Project 240, we need to get our numbers up in the House so that we can defeat these factions that just side with the Democrats. And we're working on it.
So we had this problem in Texas for a while, actually. This is why New Hampshire beat Texas on the private school choice front, even though you'd think Texas is a deeper red state, has been historically, maybe we'd have it done already. But we had 21 Republicans in our House, which is a pretty significant proportion, who voted against school choice in 2023, even after COVID. They lost their seats after doing that, but it was just, in our case, it was actually in the deepest red districts. We had the teachers union school monopoly folks. They would go into the primaries since there was basically no Democrat on the ballot, and they'd get the weaker Republican who was in step with the unions, and those were the guys who would then turn and vote against school choice. Is it a similar thing in New Hampshire, or is it all over the map? Is it, some of them are are they actually in purple districts where this is happening, or is it kind of like Texas?
There are some purple districts. That's a fair statement. There definitely is. But what I can tell you is 70 or 80% of this is union driven and not constituent driven. So they're not going to sit there and tell you my constituents want me to vote this way. It's got nothing to do with that. It's got everything to do with union hooks. That's what it is. And so these folks, or whether or not they were we have a lot of ex-fire, a lot of ex-police. We just have that stuff in the Republican side of the House. So listen, Corey, it was a good bill. It is a good bill. The timing, we could have done better on the timing to get this over the finish line. There was no shortage of work done behind the scenes between me, Matt, our chair of labor. We had visited every outside entity we needed to get this over. We had senators lined up ready to go. And we had, as long as we had removed the fire and the police, we probably, you can never speak for it, but we probably would have got a good look from the governor. So, here we are. What would I not do again? I probably would not have added in the fire and police part of this from the get-go. I probably would carve that out to begin with. We ended up having to carve it out as an amendment.
Oh, on the floor?
I probably would not have had to go through that process again, because not that there's anything wrong with it, it just drew unnecessary attention.
Yeah, I think that's what happened in Florida. They passed a union accountability bill, and I think in committee actually they changed it and made it only apply to certain groups. But
Yep.
So what's the next step? Is New Hampshire coming back in session soon in January? Is it in January?
No, so that we're done. We're on summer vacation for the moment. Our next step is one day, probably in September, called Veto Day, right? So we'll have to deal with some vetoes. Hopefully, not too many. And that's kind of our next thing we got cooking, and that's like again I said, it's one day in September coming up.
And the next opportunity to bring your bill up, would that be not until January, or?
I believe it can be launched in September, October. I can.
Oh.
And yeah. And I'm going to talk with the folks at Americans for Fair Treatment and see what we want to do. Now, what I would tell you is this: I want to see how the election goes.
Yep.
It may be a second-year bill, not a first-year bill of the biennium. I want to make sure we have the numbers in the House, because what I don't want this to be is a perennial punching bag. I want to make sure we get the juice to get this over the line, and we need to wait till we have the election to make sure we can get those 240 or close to it, right?
And the Senate should be the easier lift, right?
The Senate should be the easier lift. We've got a lot of great senators in there, and we have a supermajority.
Yep.
So we're in pretty good shape there.
So aside from this bill, what are some other reforms you think are needed for public sector accountability in New Hampshire?
If you're asking me what I'm going to propose for the next one, here it is. And everybody should listen to this. This is critically important, and I think you're really going to like this one. Matt and I have talked about this a little bit. Under collective bargaining agreements, when you have negotiations on health care, the unions use weighted averages. You know this.
You tweeted about this, didn't you?
You did.
I was going to bring this up. So yeah, Corey, talk about this for me.
This is the best kept union secret. And what happens is this: they negotiate using weighted averages. So they'll take a guy like me, who's 25 years old, single, no kids, no wife, brand new teacher, right out of college. And they assign me a 4-person healthcare plan, which is the value, and the weighted average, which is in the value of that is $35,000. And they do that across the board. Everybody gets a 4-person healthcare plan. The singles, the doubles, the 1 kid, 5 kids, whatever it is. So right across the board, right? When you tally this, it's outrageous that the taxpayer has to pay this. And what happens to the guy that says, "Oh no, I'm just single. I just need 9,000 of the 35." Do you think the taxpayer gets the rest back? Nope. It goes right into a slush fund and gets to be used for whatever they want. This has to stop. We need to get rid of weighted averages and use real numbers. That alone will reduce property taxes. Property tax problems are born from teachers' unions. We all know this.
Yeah.
This is the root of the tree.
So I guess the unions know they're doing this with their collective bargaining agreements. They're just hoping none of us figure it out.
Unless you are a legislator who's trying to figure out a way to save money on people's property taxes, or you just happen to be a stats guy, or you just happen to have a big nose, you're not going to dive into this. You know what I mean? You're going to stay away from it. There's not a lot of publications on it. Well, Brian, how'd you find out about it?
They plug you in for a family of 4. Taxpayer costs.
This is exactly how I found out about it. And I won't reveal names. I have dinner with a person who's on the school board in a town, and he tells me that you would not believe how healthcare and weighted averages are affecting our property taxes. I said, tell me more. And he goes into this big dissertation about how it's all weighted averages and everybody is a family of four, whether they like it or not. So this is a huge thing. So I'm going to work on this piece of legislation.
Yep.
That's one. The second piece, which you already know as well, is the SAUs actually collect and handle union dues, right? So the SAUs handle the collection of all the teachers' dues, and then they give it to the unions. The SAU. The SAU is funded by the taxpayer. So the taxpayer is actually collecting union dues, paying to collect union dues, and then give them to the unions. I say, let the unions do their own dirty work. Take the SAUs out of it. The SAUs shouldn't have to do that. If the unions want their dues, let the unions pull the dues out of the checks.
Yep.
The school administrative units shouldn't have to do that. That's not our responsibility as the taxpayer.
It's basically using taxpayer resources to collect union dues when the unions should be doing it themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Idaho just banned taxpayer funding of teachers' unions. So I guess this would be something that would be included in that proposal because that's taxpayer resources.
It could be. But listen, at the end of the day, this is a grind, and anybody thinks there's a silver bullet. It's just going to be one bill that's going to, take the unions to tax stuff. It's not true. This is a grind, and it needs to be worked on every single year. Right to work fashion. Here in New Hampshire, I think 9% of the people that are employed are a part of the unions. So it's a decent enough number, but it's not what it was in 1957, right?
Yep.
Listen, unions had, and some still do have, their place, maybe in the fire and police world, but not teachers. And when taxpayers are just continuously being abused, somebody has to step in, and that somebody is your local legislator.
That's right. That's right. And so we've basically been going about it the wrong way, I'd say. I'd say so many people in the education freedom movement, including myself, we've been focused on school choice, some other accountability stuff within the public school system, but not as much on teacher choice. That's kind of a new thing that we're advocating for, teachers to kind of leave their unions if they're abusing their dues and not spending it wisely. Chip and I went over stories about how they're spending it to fight against protecting girls' sports, fighting against transparency with parents in the school system, just lighting their dues on fire. In some cases, there's outright embezzlement happening where the union bosses are stealing the money, paying themselves, going on luxury vacations. And we haven't been as focused, though, on the things that like the bill that you ran in New Hampshire and these ones that you're talking about that you plan to introduce next session. So I think you're right when you say we constantly need to be working on this. We need to find all these loopholes and things these secrets that they have in the collective bargaining agreements that go over most people's heads.
Corey, you're a highly intelligent guy, huge IQ, huge following, huge Republican. How did Al Capone get taken down? I need you to tell me that. Do you remember?
No, I don't.
Corey, you do.
I've heard, but I refresh our memory.
It wasn't front page news headlines of racketeering and mafia type stuff. It was IRS taxes. He got caught by taxes. They came in the back door and they got him. That's what needs to happen here. And I'm not taking anything away from school choice, EFA,
Yep.
Boys and girls sports, but that's all front page headline stuff. Now, you should have two teams, one working that, because that's very important, and you need the IRS going in the back. And that's how you're going to do this. That's how unions will get their due. You got to hit these unions from all different angles and make the taxpayer, and it's not even about abusing or taking out unions. What it's about is taxpayer education. every dollar I give to my town and state, I need to know where that dollar's going, man.
Yep.
Because it's not your dollar, it's mine. And I want to know what I'm buying. So, advice for the team here watching, everybody watching, look under all the rocks, not just the biggest one in the front row.
That's right. I like that. All right. That's a good money quote to end it on.
Right.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for coming out. Brian hey, you just went, the camera went out. So maybe that's really good timing, for us to jump onto, yeah, I wanted to thank Brian, but his camera went out, but yeah, thank you guys. Thanks, Brian, for coming out. Thanks, Chip. He had to jump off early. Again, this is the Red Pen Podcast, powered by Americans for Fair Treatment. We had a special guest, Brian Labrie from New Hampshire today. He discussed his bill in New Hampshire. He discussed next steps of holding the teachers' unions accountable. Chip and I discussed tons of stories. I had a little media asset here, an image that our team had put together. Here's our grades for the week. These are just 3 of the stories. There's a bunch of others, but we give the teachers unions Fs for all these stories, whether it comes to corruption convictions, stealing union member dues for personal gain, and then also the teachers unions fighting against the ballot initiatives in Washington state. They get straight Fs. They fail the show. But until next time, again, this is the Red Pen Podcast. Everybody, make sure you share with your friends, subscribe. If you want to opt out of your union, Americans for Fair Treatment has already been contacted by 2,800 public sector employees saying, you know what, I want to get out of my union. That saves about over $250,000 if you tally that up, of people reducing dues that go to the union because they vote with their feet and go somewhere else. So if you want to leave your union as well, you can go to myduesmychoice.org. I love how they came up with that, myduesmychoice.org, to find out more about how to opt out of your union. So thank you guys so much again for coming out, the Red Pen Podcast.